The Illinois Court Commission, a judicial disciplinary agency, kicked Judge Adrian last Friday off the bench after it determined he lied about what happened and for his conduct in the case, saying he, quote, intentionally circumvented the law to satisfy his personal belief as to what constituted a just sentence and then lied about it under oath to serve his own interests. In October of 2021, Judge Adrian first found Drew Clinton guilty of sexually assaulting Cameron the night of a graduation party earlier that year, but 4 months after the ruling, same judge apparently didn't want to sentence Clinton to the mandatory minimum of 4 years, so he just threw out the conviction, saying it wasn't, quote, just for him to serve that kind of time. Clinton had served just 148 days. The judge joined me earlier this week explaining what he says were his reasons for reversing the conviction.
The evidence showed that it wasn't the rape, that he was never inside her. The DNA evidence of the case showed that there was no semen that was involved. What she testified to originally was proven by the evidence not to be correct. She wasn't raped. That was the original finding. After I reconsidered, and it was pointed out to me that, in fact, there wasn't evidence that she was unable to consent, then I had to find him not guilty.
The judge now essentially accusing the victim of lying. Cameron, who's now 18, joined us the day after to respond to his comments and tell her side of the story.
He says there was no evidence there, but all of the evidence was there. He's saying there was no semen. That does not mean there was no DNA. His DNA was still inside of me. And my DNA was in his underwear. How else does my DNA get into his underwear?
Back with me, Jesse Weber, anchor for Law and Crime Network, Misty Marris, trial attorney, and Jonna Spilbor, criminal defense attorney. Jonna, what do you make of what happened here?
I'm going to make my point, and then I'm going to duck, because this judge deserves his job back. Here's why. It is common practice, you guys all know this, after a verdict and before a sentence, a defense attorney has an opportunity to make a number of motions, right? That happened here. The judge didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to undo what I did. He responded to a defense motion. He changed his mind. That's not a circumvention of the law. That is a common use of discretion. I don't see how we went from that to kicking him off the bench.
That's what he says, but the courts commission says that they think he was lying, that he was just making that up in an effort to explain why he didn't want to give the sentence that was a mandatory minimum.
Well, the judge obviously is saying that's not what happened here. Right. And look, he could have acquitted this guy across the board and we wouldn't be having this discussion, and that wouldn't have gotten him kicked off the bench.
It seems to me he didn't do his homework. I don't think he knew what the mandatory minimum was. That's what happened. I think he's at the time, he felt the evidence was there, felt it was enough to convicted him 1 of 3 charges, and then when he saw, oh, the mandatory minimum's 4 years, I'm not going to sentence this guy. Why don't I just throw the conviction out? This doesn't happen. We don't see this happen. It's not like new evidence came in or an appellate court overturned something. This is, even the prosecutor in this case has said he's never seen a judge overturn their own conviction like this.
Yeah, it seems like he was just developing his own sentencing guidelines.
Right,
and trying to go back. And it's really the cover-up, it seems, that he goes back as sort of a CYA and reverses his own decision. That's the craziest part to me, Dan. So it was his decision. It was
this was no jury, et cetera. Nope. All right, first, here is the judge. I asked him at one point, do you have any sympathy for her? This is what he said.
I feel sorry that she was used by this not-for-profit group who put her out. Should have never been done to a minor like that after she didn't give truthful testimony in the case.
And here's Cameron now responding to that, number 2.
There's never been any nonprofit organizations, any organizations. This was me wanting to put this out there to try. At first, we thought that we could maybe get Drew to go to prison again. Then I didn't know about double jeopardy, but after knowing about that, it became about the judge. The judge is the one who let him free.
And the judge does seem to be like kind of unnecessarily throwing in digs at her, right? I mean, you know, like he did convict the guy initially, right? Of something. And now the way to deal with this would be to say, you know, look, I have sympathy for her, because obviously he does, because he thought that the guy was guilty at first, no?
Well, and then he nullified his own verdict. But I'm curious about another thing. This was a bench trial.
Yes.
No jury here. There's always a reason for that. And typically you have a bench trial in a case this serious when you have a sympathetic judge. So I don't think it's new news to any of the parties concerned that this guy was sympathetic to the defense.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.